talk to me about breathwork. When did it dawn on you that breathwork is so important? What was your first exposure to it? And how did you start developing your breathwork system that's influenced by the Soviet style, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
What was your first exposure to the power of breathwork?
If we go all the way back to the Gojuru has one of their katas is Chun. It's a very short, very static kata, but it's trained specifically with inhales and exhales aligned to certain movements. It's a very powerful kata. Let's fast forward through all the styles. I also trained a little bit of Tai Chi, and in Tai Chi they emphasize very slow, very deep breathing. Now, Tai Chi, again, I believe, as a movement, beautiful, it's wonderful. But also, if you're not training that against live resisting opponents, you lose the essence of it. So we can say today there is true Tai Chi as a martial art, but there's Tai Chi as a movement. And those two are very, very separate today. And the Tai Chi martial art is hard to come by. Every style that I trained, every teacher spoke about you've got to be calm and you've got to breathe. None of them taught how. Everybody spoke. Everybody emphasized the importance. Everybody said it's crucial in our art. Yet the actual practical, how do I do that while I'm being sat on by this person or being thrown by that person? How do I do that? I never found it. I also then trained a little bit of Qigong, where that is a big emphasis on breath and coordinating it with intention in order to get a deeper understanding of physiology and psychology and also energetics. But still, that wasn't in the martial arts, right? Because that was for health. Years later, I came across Scott Sonnen. And I think back in the day, we used to get those Inside Kung Fu magazines. And he was being featured in one of those. And just the way he spoke and what he wrote about, I went and researched him and tried to find out more about him. And he was always talking about flow and breathing. And his style of training, which was based out of the Russian, the Ross system at the time, as it was called, and the Spetsnaz. He was also a Sambo practitioner. And he noticed that his students, when they competed against the Russians, for example, didn't fail on technique, but they failed because the Russians were always calm and their breathing was in place. And his students were always stressing out and gassing and tanking. And he put the connection together. And then he got invited to go and actually intern in back then it was still the Soviet Union. He was one of the first Westerners to do so. Wow. And he learned their techniques and he came back and he adapted. And that's where I went to train with him in the States through that stage it was called the Circular Strength, CST, Circular Strength Training System, with his club bells. And that's where, for the first time, we were taught this is how you incorporate your breath into your physical training. And there were specific steps that one could attain. So it was basically, here's how you do it. There's the gold, right? Because even in jiu-jitsu, for years, they would always say, stay calm, be in charge of your breath. One person that actually had a method to it was Hickson Gracie. He actually had a method. He understood how to breathe when you want your heart rate to go up, how to breathe when you want to bring your heart rate down, how to breathe in between. And that's what I found with you also. Is a lot of people talk about the importance of breath and they can talk about it, but then the next step is, okay, but how do we practice this? Because it's a skill, because it's linked just too much, as much as anything else. Yes. If we're talking about training, using your body, the moment that happens, you have to be in control of your breath. And the recovery portion is just as important, you know? It's also one of those that without that, you're going to get injured, you're going to hurt, you're going to have disease, you're going to have sickness. And sometimes it takes a while. And that's the thing, because all of this stuff is in all of the martial arts. If you look closely, you can see the hints. But for whatever reason, a lot of the teachers, maybe they weren't taught or it was lost. Everybody talks it. Nobody tells you how. Just calm down, just breathe. But they don't tell you how to breathe and how to regulate your breath, because it's always a nervous system regulation when you're in the midst of an intense training situation. And that's the thing, because if we're going to speak longevity in the martial arts, without that crucial component, you're going to run up against the hurdles of sickness, injury, at some point.
And your nervous system, because it's stressful. You are exposing yourself to stress and long-term stress, cortisol, adrenaline, that has a negative impact. So it's not just about when you are training or exerting yourself, crucially understanding in between how to recover,
yes,
and then also rest afterwards, how to calm down your nervous system, how to get the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. Because sometimes you can train and you'll be wired for hours afterwards.
Yeah.
And people love the endorphin rush, but there's also lots of cortisol, adrenaline still running through your system. So being able to pull that lever and functionally understanding how to bring yourself back, going into a match, being warm, but your heart rate is low. I can't explain that sensation to people, but it's something that needs to be trained.
Yes.
The thing also, so even an open mat or class.
That's exactly what Scott Sonnen found when he and his team back in the early days competed with the Russians, is that the Russians were going into the match completely calm. During the match, they were handling it. And in between bouts, they were calm and they were just standing there breathing through their nose, while his teammates were all gasping for air and like almost lying on the ground ready to puke.
Yeah.
And that's where he realized the difference. He also then extended it because he found that your first responders, your police, your firefighters, your army, your special forces, even paramedics, for example, what was the main thing that was injuring them or killing them on their job was not the actual job of like arresting a bad guy or dealing with a car accident. It was the stress levels that weren't regulated in between. They had these long bouts of nothing, and then suddenly they had to go. But they didn't know how to deregulate and bring themselves down from that highly stressed state in between. And that, over time, caused such an impact on the physiology, the emotions, the nervous system, into the actual endocrine system, the nervous system, the breathing system, everything. And that's where most of the injuries and deaths were occurring, not because of the on the job in the moment, but the stress that wasn't being regulated in between.
The recovery and the rest.
So what I learned through Sonnen, which was incredible for me, and from his TACFIT system, is that the 3 layers is we learn to recover in between training sessions. So I train on Tuesday, and if it was a little bit hectic, how do I recover from that so I'm ready to train on Thursday? So I don't come into training with a bit of a deficit. The next level down is, how do I recover in between rounds? So we roll for 5 minutes. How do I then bring my heart rate down so I'm ready and I'm calm and I'm present to go into round number 2? The third level is, how do I recover in the round? If I feel my heart rate getting a little bit up where I'm going to start gasping for air and my heart rate's pounding and I'm beginning to tense and flail, how do I recover? And that is all linked to breath. How you breathe, when you breathe, and the regulation of the exhale is the key, because our exhale is our gearing. Sometimes we need first gear. Sometimes we need to shift all the way up to third into fourth, so we're just cruising. But if you're cruising and you're coming to a hill, you may need to downshift to third. Yeah. And that's all done through the exhale.
Yeah, it's for me, it's fascinating stuff, and it's so worthwhile, the investment. But people still have that barrier. But I feel it's also one of those things where at some point you're going to learn that Doesn't matter how fit you are, how conditioned you are, and all those things are super important. You have to have good cardio, you have to have a good diet, you have to lift weights. But at some point, doesn't matter how fit you are going to get tired. The best people in the world still get tired. Like, you're exerting energy. We're all trapped in that system, working energy systems, your nervous system's taking stress. So at a certain point, you're going to realize that I can't, like, the solution isn't to just do more cardio or to do even more. It's, okay, with what I have, how smart am I and how good am I at regulating that, understanding that? And that's always oxygen in the body, lactic acid. It's, like you said, everything's tied to the rest.
And just a quick little thing, the less your CO2 tolerance, the more lactic acid you produce. So in part, it's about getting used to CO2 tolerance, which is simple training. But it's like anything. You have to apply it, and you start small and you get better and better. The problem is we have life stress. We have stress at work. We're driving the traffic. We get stress. We're thinking about our financial situation. So when we come into training, and now we're putting martial arts training stress on top of that, we don't realize the cumulative effect. At some point, we have to pay back. We spend on the credit card, we accumulate interest. At some point, we look and say, how am I ever going to pay this debt? And that's where the injuries, that's where people come in and say, I suddenly got sick and I'm out for 2 weeks. So the breath regulation, and as you said earlier, it's the recovery in between rounds, in between sessions, that is important. It's the deregulation of the nervous system.
Absolutely. So I don't want to offend anyone by using the word old. So we will say that you are one of our more mature members with a lot of wisdom. You've been on the mat for a long time. But what is your advice to any older grappler or martial artist in general over the age of 40? Like, we know that jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, any functional martial art where you're sparring, you're doing live work, it's going to take a toll on the body. And unfortunately, as you get older, and somebody who's in their 40s, they can't play the same game as somebody who's 20. Like, there's still this idea for a lot of people that if you meet a 50-year-old black belt who might have been a multiple times world champion, and you put him up against a 21-year-old that's in the shape of his life, that somehow this 50-year-old must still, chi blast this 21-year-old away. And there's weight difference, there's weight classes for a reason, speed, athleticism, youth, it goes a long way. How do you approach training, especially if you have to roll or spar against some of the younger guys? And what is your advice to an older grappler or older martial artist?
It's a very deep question, and I think there's many layers to it. Firstly, let's talk mental emotional layer. And I think this is something that I've had to deal with in the past, and I'm still dealing with it. And I think into the future, I will still be dealing with it. Because there is an ego element that always comes in, and especially when somebody's younger, stronger, faster, more athletic, you're going to find yourself under more pressure if you're trying to compete with that at their level. You have to learn, where am I? How can I deal with what's coming at me? Retain my calmness, and in essence, just make it through the round. And I think that's it for me, regardless of who tapped who or who was more dominant. Because some days you're dominant, some days you're not. So the ego, the mental side is a key component. You have to deal with that notion of maybe training in class and not always winning. So how do we reframe that? Because it's win or lose is irrelevant in jiu-jitsu, in any martial art. It's, what did I learn? How did I perform? So how I switch that around for me is I look at performance. So in the round, in the training session, is my heart rate at a certain level? Am I still able to remain calm in whatever chaos is upon me at the time? Am I able to come out of the training session without feeling exhausted? I look at training to that point where I feel great, where I feel good. There's obviously a little tiredness, sure, that was hard, but I'd never want to leave training exhausted, because then I've pushed too hard. So mentally, one has to refrain.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge where we are and who we are training with. So physically now, that's a huge component, because for me, what I've realized is the recovery aspect has to be a very, very important focus. Scott Sonnen always told us this, and I've come to realize this so deeply. If exercise or training is queen, recovery is king. So recovery is always almost more important than the training you're doing, because it's in the recovery where all your gains are made.
Yeah.
So for me, in between training sessions is how I recover.
Yeah.
And the number one, I think, for somebody who's 40 or older is the joint mobility. And that goes back to lifestyle, because most of us are sitting in chairs all day and we're confined, and then we come and now we've suddenly got to move through all these 6 degrees of movement in jiu-jitsu. And especially if you're tight somewhere or you're tense somewhere, it's going to impact. So daily joint mobility is one of the non-negotiables. Without that, you will get more and more injuries, and you will find your martial arts a lifespan getting shorter and shorter. Whereas now you've got a knee or a shoulder or a hip problem. So joint mobility is key. Joint mobility is not so much stretching. Some stretching is good.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it, absolutely. But it's more about mobilizing the joints to release the tension that's built up. Movement. Obviously, the breath work is a crucial part of the recovery. Then a big thing which all of us overlook, I was guilty of it myself, is hydration. I don't think most people are not sufficiently hydrated.
Yeah.
That goes a long way to lubricating the joints, getting the blood flow going, health of the organs, etc. So we've got joint mobility as a daily non-negotiable. You've got your training, how you train. Now that's where the mindset comes in, because you've got to be very disciplined to train in a way that doesn't compromise your health.
Yeah.
That is I'm training for performance, my performance, not for win. I'm trying to get the win over my partner all the time, and I'm avoiding the loss.
Yeah.
So how did I perform? Was my breathing correct? Was my movement smooth? How do I attain flow in my training? And then I think an element of strength training is also a key.
Yeah.
And that's done in between your jiu-jitsu training, for example.
Absolutely.
Because we do tend to lose muscle mass, we tend to lose strength.
Yeah.
So you have to factor in some form of strength training to complement the martial arts. Yeah.
What you said is so important, because, or also, let's say you're more experienced than somebody, but you're way older. There's this tendency to believe that, okay, well, I've been training for 5 years or 6 years, so I should be dominating. I should be winning every single exchange, every round. I should be submitting this person.
Yes.
And then you grapple with somebody who's, got 20 or 30 years of youth on you, plus they're really athletic. Maybe they're a natural athlete. They're very intelligent. They've got all of these attributes, and they've just got more fuel to burn. So even if you beat them in the round, you're going to be punished for that for the next 3 days. The next morning, they're getting up and they're going to their next training session.
Feeling nothing.
So you have to reframe your mind also. And sometimes just going with somebody who outmatches you, but you say, okay, well, today you couldn't pass my guard. Or today he got me in side control and I escaped. Or he tried to submit me and I was staying calm and I used less energy than he did. And so you just reframe your mind to small victories, and that becomes the goal.
That's the key. What are the metrics that I use to measure my performance?
Yeah.
If I'm measuring the metric of how many times did I submit, that's a losing game, because there's always somebody younger, faster, stronger, more athletic, without a doubt. And if I use the metric exactly as you said, last time he passed my guard within 5 seconds. This time he took 7 seconds. That's almost like a 50% improvement.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what are the metrics? It's how did I stay calm? Where was my breathing? Was my breathing regulated? Was I present moment focused and attaining a flow state while I'm rolling? Regardless of who submitted who, regardless of who tapped, or did my breathing go into panic mode where I'm just through the mouth all the time and I'm tensing? Did I finish the round not gassed out and not tanked? So these are the metrics that will allow us to stay in the game into our 50s, 60s and beyond.
Definitely.
That is the key.
And, an argument I sometimes get with my older clients, and it's ego, and it's healthy ego, because people want to perform at their best, and they want to be ambitious, and they want to be competitive, and they don't want to be an easy round for the younger guys, and look, some of the older black belts, they have enough knowledge and cunning and wisdom that they can outsmart you just with tactics, which should be the goal, inevitably.
Yes.
But I always tell guys like that, in what other sports can you expect somebody who's let's say 50 to compete against a 21-year-old? And then if you add a weight difference on top of that, so imagine that 21-year-old's got 20 kilograms on you and they're younger and same level of experience. If you can roll with that person for a whole hour or a whole round, and they couldn't tap you, they couldn't pass the guard, you were able to slow them down, control most of the positions, and they leave the round more tired than you did. That's a massive victory, because if you had to go compete, even in a Masters division over 40, you would go up against somebody your age, your size, your weight.
And your strength,
And suddenly your game would shine. You'd be like, wow, I'm doing competition and I'm doing so well. Why do I still struggle in the gym? Well, because weight makes a difference, youth makes a difference.
And isn't that the essence? Because it's almost like that idealized state that the martial arts is supposed to teach you how to get into. You're this calm, zen, monk-like figure who, in the midst of battle, doesn't break a sweat and smiles.
Yes.
And at the end of it, you've wiped out your enemies.
Yes.
And that, for me, is the biggest metric, is how calm was I during the roll?
Yes.
Because if I can do that with a 20-year-old who's faster, stronger, more agile, more athletic, bigger, weighs more, when I roll against somebody my own weight, age, etc., what an advantage. But more so is the advantage of longevity.
Yes.
Because without that calmness, you will find yourself getting more and more injured and less time in training until you become one of those people who I used to train, but now I'm too, quote unquote, old. Ultimately, it's a spiritual growth, because you are delving into the deeper aspects of yourself that in your day-to-day life, you may not get the opportunity to face and discover. That is, I believe, the deepest beauty about training in jiu-jitsu. Not that you can do these fantastic moves and you can roll and throw.
What I also appreciate about it is when you're in your 20s, maybe the goal for you is, I want to beat everybody, I want to pass everybody's guard. And that's and I don't knock it. That's what a competitive athlete needs to do. And if you want to compete, you will. Even when you compete, there's going to come a day where you're going to start facing younger competition. We see it in every sport, rugby, any contact sport, where the younger guys comes in and you're heading to past your athletic prime.
Yes.
But what's fun about that is you don't then have to throw in the towel.
No.
It's just the way that you measure things. Now it's, okay, can I go 5 rounds today without breaking a sweat? Can I stop the guy from grabbing my leg? Can I get the underhook? Sometimes that's the biggest thing. The guy's on top of you. You were able to make space so that you could breathe and get the underhook, and he couldn't get anything. So the positive part of it is that you can always adjust your goals. Your goal might not be now to be the toughest guy on the mat that submits and runs through everyone, but now your goal is, maybe I'm the guy that nobody can make tired, or that can slow everybody down, or that's got the best defense on the mat, like nobody can catch him.
And we're, as simple as it is, maybe that goal is also, I'm still training.
Yeah.
Why? Because I love it. It keeps me strong. It keeps me healthy.
I can still stay calm under pressure in extreme discomfort, even though I have to adjust. That's where injuries are also a good thing, because injuries make you think about things differently, and you have to find a more cunning, sophisticated way to do
every
things.
Injury, and is, if we look at that word, is a jury from within. And it's a physiological feedback that you were out of balance on some level, somewhere. Yes, things happen where you're holding in an armbar and it slips or whatever, and your elbow gets pulled and now your elbow's injured. But it's still calling you to be accountable and to honestly look within and say, what am I being called to focus on as a result of this injury? Is it something physical, mental, emotional, or is it something that encompasses all three? Is it ultimately that maybe I'm pursuing the wrong goal in training and I've got to readjust my way? That's the fascinating thing.
Definitely.
Because I believe that's ultimately where our training leads us, is into a deeper understanding of who we are fundamentally and why we are.
So I have to end off with my favorite Dean story. So for people who have trained at this gym, it's very often that we get beginners that join our classes, and then they'll come out for a trial or join and sign up. And then at some point on the mat, they'll stumble into Dean as a training partner. And it has happened multiple times where people would then ask Dean during a demonstration or even during training, what are we supposed to do? And then Dean would look at them and tell them, I don't know, I'm new. This is my first session. And then people believe you. So then they think that Dean is brand new. He's a beginner just like them. And then when they roll with you at the end, they go like, wow, how's this guy so good at this? Because they thought they were, we had someone who literally trained with you for 6 months, and then you got your purple belt. And they were like, well, he's really good at it, but how did he get his purple belt that quickly? I thought we started at the same time, and meanwhile, you've been here for years. So that's always funny. Look, the jig is up now. People now know that. But if somebody hasn't watched this podcast yet, a few newbies are going to fall for that trick again.
I will continue to use it as often as possible, because it does then give me that tiny little window where I can dominate the person and actually get the moves in. And once the game's up and they realize and they train, then it's a different story. But at least for that time, it's like,
and
I dominate.
They learn a valuable lesson about how effective deception is when it comes to grappling in general.
Exactly.
So Darren, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Coach.
Looking forward. It's an honor to spend the time with you and to have you on our mats. And thank you for all your wisdom and insight. We appreciate you.
Thank you for the environment you've created as well, because it's one of those gyms that are very rare in the world. And I've trained at a lot of places with a lot of teachers, and I think the way that we train is on the next level.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.